All right. Hello, everybody. If you can hear me, I would love um, a thumbs up or a comment. I just need to, I've been having a little bit of trouble today with my audio here. I think it was on the incorrect um, mic. All right. Anyway, I hope everyone's having a great day, great start to your week. Today, we're talking about medications. When you might think about talking to a veterinarian about anti-anxiety medication for foster dogs. And before I forget, this is the last installment for our June Foster a Pet Month material, which means that our shelter and rescue discount will be ending in just a few days. So if you were waiting on that, there are 3 more days left to get 20% off on all of our stuff, all of our services and classes if you work with a shelter or rescue. All right, so we're talking about medication. I am not a veterinarian and I can't provide any advice on whether you should use medication or what medications to use. Today, we're just talking about general considerations, and I interviewed a veterinary behaviorist, and I'll be sharing what we talked about today with you. And we talked about what rescues can think about when making decisions about when to consult, should we consult with a veterinary behaviorist or our vet about medications? What do we do when the dog's getting adopted? So let's take a look at what we covered. All right, anti-anxiety medications for foster dogs. So very briefly, here's what we're going to cover. How are anti-anxiety medications used in dogs for what kind of issues in general? Oops, sorry about that. When should you talk to your vet or try to consult ideally with a veterinary behaviorist about a foster dog who you think may benefit from medications? And then when it's time for adoption, how do you set that dog up for success if they are on meds? All right, real brief review again I've done this every week, so I apologize for those of you who've been following along and are hearing this for the 4th time, but what is fostering? If you have never fostered a dog or cat or other animal, there are almost certainly local fosters or local rescues in need of your help. So if you're interested, you can search online, you can go to Pet Finder, you can see who is offering animals for adoption in your area and contact them and see if they're in need of foster homes. So foster homes usually provide temporary care for an animal who does not have a home right now, but the organization is trying to find an adoptive home for. And definitely some shelters and probably many rescues do allow people to foster for as little as 1 or 2 days at a time. And sometimes fostering is very long term, months to even years. Usually, fostering is done through a nonprofit organization like an animal rescue or an animal shelter, and those can be private nonprofits or municipal shelters. And the benefit, besides just the animal having a place to stay, the benefit of having foster homes is that the organization and you as a foster parent get to learn about that animal, about their behavior in a home environment, and provide good information to an adoptive home, which might make it more likely for the adoption to succeed. All right, let's talk about when anti-anxiety medications are used in dogs. This is just very general overview. So the point usually of a veterinary behaviorist or a veterinarian prescribing anti-anxiety medications is to reduce fear and anxiety and thereby reduce related behaviors. So behaviors that we think are related to the dog's, fear of something or anxiety about something. So some behaviors that are often seen in animals that are experiencing fear and anxiety, although these are not restricted only to fearful animals, of course, would include lunging and barking at stuff, at things like dogs or people, fleeing from people, animals, sounds, and hiding, sort of avoiding interaction, Sometimes destructive chewing and scratching, tearing up property can be related to fear and anxiety. Howling and shaking, sometimes when left alone, or maybe when they hear certain sounds. For those of you who have dogs who are sound sensitive, this might resonate with you. Snapping and biting. Usually, we assume or believe that any snapping or biting behavior, unless it's clearly in play, is probably motivated by the dog's desire to escape something that's going on with them or to them, escape a person handling them, whatever. Now, I should mention that what the behavior looks like, and that's kind of what I have listed here is what it looks like. That doesn't tell you for sure why the animal is doing it. It doesn't tell you that. Usually when we talk about behavior related to fear and anxiety, what we mean are behaviors that are reinforced by escaping or avoiding something the animal finds aversive. So all dogs who are lunging you can't just assume for sure that they're trying to escape or drive away something. But I just wanted to give a brief overview of behaviors that are often seen in dogs who are fearful. Your dog, ideally, any dog who's going in for a meds consult should be assessed. Their behavior should be assessed to try to identify whether or not their behavior is in fact reinforced by escaping something they find scary. All right, so besides improving behavior, reducing fear and anxiety, we hope that anti-anxiety medications can help speed up training. And I talk a little bit more about why this is in a previous blog. I'll link in today's blog when I go write it, I'll link to it. As a blog about whether or not you should consult your vet about medication for your own dog. So we hope to speed up training and we hope to improve quality of life. Anyone who has lived with any significant degree of anxiety or fear or depression knows that that really impacts your quality of life. And there are medications out there that are designed specifically to help with these issues, to decrease suffering. As a reminder, go ahead and pop questions in below wherever you're watching this video if you have any questions while I'm live here. Okay, so when to consider, or what should we talk about when we think about, well, should we use behavior medications for foster dogs? And again, this is from my interview with Dr. Bain, who is a veterinary behaviorist at University of California, Davis's veterinary behavior service. I have the link to their website on the post for this video. So you should be able to find that on YouTube and Facebook. All right, so some questions that rescue folks may ask, or foster homes. Why consider a meds consult at all? Like, what should I be looking for and when should I think about consulting? How long to wait, right? You get a foster dog into your home, they seem terrified, but well, maybe they'll settle down. How long should I wait to talk to the vet? How long will the dog need to be on medications if we start him now, him or her? If we do put a dog on behavioral medications, what do we tell the adopters or potential adopters about what to expect and what they'll need to do? What are some ethical considerations around using behavior medications in foster animals? And then if your organization decides that a consult with a vet behaviorist is the way to go for your foster animal, who do you talk to about this? Sorry about that. I have an extra slide. Okay. Why should we consider behavior medications? If you've got a foster dog who needs to do something in order to get adopted, and they cannot currently do those things due to, at least as far as you can tell, being fearful or anxious, like you need them to meet adopters, but right now they are too fearful of people to do anything but hide, or they lunge and snap at them. You want the dog to be able to accept treats from potential adopters, or for them to tolerate petting from a potential adopter after they've met them a few times or whatever. And the dog absolutely cannot do these things, then these dogs might be candidates for a medication consult. And I mean, there are many, many more, right? The dog needs to be able to be left alone for some amount of time or whatever. Regardless of what the reason is, so the dog is unable to cope, to behave in some way that is necessary to get the dog adopted and to succeed in an adoptive home. And that's even if you try to pick that perfect adoptive home. You know how hard that is to find. Even if you find it, the dog may need some extra help. You're going to want to have a behavioral goal. Just saying we want this dog to be less anxious is kind of hard to use as a benchmark when you're trying to decide later, okay, have we met our goal? Having a behavior goal, like we want the dog to be able to do X behavior with relaxed body language, for instance, might be a little bit easier to tell whether you've actually achieved. So do have a behavior goal or 2 or 3 in mind if you are considering a medication consult for the dog. And if you have a goal, how are you going to get there? You need a behavior plan, and you really should have trainer support. These dogs that are fearful enough that they need medication, and there isn't, I wouldn't say that there's your vet will tell you, but there's no like magical sort of minimal level of fear a dog has to have for you to consider a meds consult. But if they have a behavior issue, really any behavior issue, but especially if you're going to be putting them on medication, you should have a trainer, a good positive reinforcement trainer, somehow involved on call to help the foster home, probably train the dog and reach those behavior goals. So you're actually taking advantage of that edge you're getting, the benefit from those medications. All right, when do you discuss whether this dog needs medication, this foster dog? So not very satisfying, but there is no one right answer. I know you guys have probably all seen the sort of meme or whatever or infographic that's out there that says 3-3-3, 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months. And I think the intent, and those are like general guidelines for how long it takes a adopted dog to like settle into a home or something. And I think that the intention behind that is good. The idea is trying to get people to be more patient and not expect the dog to be totally relaxed and happy in a new home immediately. But it's pretty arbitrary, right? There is no right answer to how much time it should take a dog to settle in and be happy in a new home. And a lot of times when there's a behavior issue, just waiting is not going to improve anything. In fact, if there's a behavior problem that's being reinforced in the home and you're just like, oh, it's just too soon, we need to wait 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months. By the time you get to 3 months, the behavior may be quite strong and have a strong reinforcement history, and now you have to dig yourself out of that hole. So there isn't a magical amount of time to wait before seeing, oh, is this going to get better by itself? And very often behavior problems don't get better by themselves, right? Behavior is driven by the environment. Unless you change the environment, behavior is probably not going to change. So if you have a dog you think might benefit, they're very fearful, there's no amount of time you have to wait before talking to your veterinarian. And it doesn't hurt to ask, right? I mean, if they think it's too early or they think the dog doesn't need meds, that's fine. But you can still ask. You should think about whether environmental changes could fix the problem on their own. So a lot of our really fearful dogs or anxious dogs, they're kind of scared of a lot of stuff, the world, new things, new places, sounds. And putting them in a new foster home won't necessarily make a big difference. But if you've got a dog who has a kind of a narrow behavior issue, so maybe they're really afraid of a large dog in their current foster home, would whatever problem behavior surrounding that they're having now, could you just solve that problem by sending them to a foster home without a large dog? So that's another thing to think about. Could we just make a simple environmental change and give the dog some relief that way? So as usual, the answer is to consult your vet, or even better, a veterinary behaviorist if you're not sure. And this is not from Dr. Bain, this is my personal opinion. But personally, I advise clients to go sooner rather than later. One, because if the dog's suffering and there's something we can do about it, I want to do it now. I want to do it as soon as possible. And also, especially these days, if you reach out now to make an appointment with a veterinary behaviorist, you could easily be waiting several months. So not something to kind of put off if you think you might want to do it. All right, so say you've talked to your vet or the veterinary behaviorist, you've decided to put the foster dog on medication. How long do they need to be on meds? Is this going to be really temporary? Is it going to be lifelong? And again, probably not a very satisfactory answer for everyone. You want to know, right? But there's no way to know, really. And there's no general rule. For each individual dog, you're going to be training and assessing them over time when they're on whatever medications you put them on, and making decisions with the veterinary behaviorist about when and whether to wean the dog off medication. So this is not something that you can decide on your own, and there is no one answer. It may well vary with the environment. So in the foster home, say the dog had some behavior problem and medication did help along with training, and then you send them to an adoptive home, it's possible that the triggers, the antecedents, the things that bothered the dog in the foster home are less. So maybe it's they were afraid of traffic noises and the dog is now moved out to a more suburban or rural setting, something like that. So it's possible that with an environmental change, the dog might be able to discontinue medication. But again, that's something that you don't just leave to the foster to decide, or to the adopter. So medications sometimes are used just situationally. I know some of you have medications from your veterinarian that you just use for vet visits. I do that with my dogs too. It helps a lot. Sometimes for a problem that you're working on with the trainer, the dog may be on meds for several months, and then the trainer and your veterinary behaviorist work together to decide when you've reached your goals and when you might try to discontinue medication. And some dogs are going to be on this stuff lifelong. And, if that's what's best for the dog and that's what your veterinary behaviorist advises you, then that's okay. Really important point here, and I've seen this happen several times now. Regardless of whether the dog seems to be doing better in the foster home, the adopter can't just stop giving the medication. That's not safe. So the rescue, you as the foster home, or ideally the people running the rescue you're fostering for, really need to be involved in making sure this does not happen. All right, so adoption considerations. The dog's been adopted. What do? He's on behavior medication. The medication must be continued by the adopter. You have to talk to them about it. You need to provide quite a bit of the medication. Don't send an adopter with either no meds and say, oh, you just need to get this from your own vet, or with like a couple days or a week of meds. The chances of them just not getting around to getting a refill are really high. So make sure that if the dog is on daily medication, that you send the adopter with, ideally several weeks. So they have plenty of time, several weeks worth of the medication. So they have plenty of time to get set up with their own vet and get a prescription. The rescue should connect the adopter with the prescribing veterinarian. It might work out that vet can be their vet if they're local and they don't already have a veterinarian. Or once the adopter has been connected with the prescribing vet, then they can work together, ideally with a rescue organization representative, to help get care transferred over to their new vet. So that really, people can often appreciate the rescue taking a bit of an active role in this. That could be things like making sure that records are transferred, they get over to the new veterinarian, even helping to open a line of communication between the adopter and the prescribing vet, and then even putting them in contact with their new vet. Most people don't really know how to do this. All right, so after adoption, one of the main concerns, again, is to make sure that medication is continued as prescribed by making sure they have a lot of the meds starting out, and then facilitating that veterinary care establishment so that it's nice and smooth and there's no interruption. Okay, these are big picture ethical considerations that are probably most of interest to folks who are running rescues and shelters, although foster parents might also be interested in this. You might just not be in the position to make these decisions yourself if you're fostering for an organization. One thing to think about is, are you just medicating the dog so they will tolerate a bad environment for them? Like if you would just get them into an environment that's more suited to them, they wouldn't need medication. So it's not, it's potentially questionably ethical to give a dog medication to just make them sort of tolerate what for them is not a good place, a good environment. If you're going to go the medication route, or at least the consultation route with a veterinary behaviorist, can your rescue provide the behavior support that a foster home is going to need to do the training? Because remember, the meds are only part of this, usually. You're going to want to take advantage of any decrease in fear and anxiety you get from those medications to get some training done. Do you have someone who can help the foster home do that? This isn't something most people can DIY. If a dog is seriously, severely fearful or anxious or aggressive, and you're looking at a plan that involves anti-anxiety medication and training that will need to be continued, most likely by the adoptive home, it might be worth taking a step back. I know this is not a popular thing to think about or talk about. No one wants to think about this, but is this dog really adoptable? And if so, by whom? What kind of home would be needed for this dog to thrive? And not just for the dog to thrive, but remember, we want the adopters to enjoy their dog. So there may be, some homes or some number of homes that could make it work with this dog, but would they really want to make it work? And then what kind of resources would be necessary? So everyone who's in rescue or sheltering knows that you think about this sometimes, like, well, this dog really needs a home in the country with a single woman who never has visitors, doesn't have any extended family visiting, no children visiting, no other pets. So you've got this, unicorn home in mind. And by the way, they're also going to need, several $1,000s a year for training and mostly for the training, a little bit for the medication. Medications usually aren't that expensive, but one-on-one training can be pretty pricey. So think about how realistic it is that you're going to be able to find a home for this dog. And also, if you're in charge of the rescue or the shelter, it's important to know what your vision is and kind of what your mission statement is. If you are pulling dogs from animal shelters, many of whom end up needing medication, anti-anxiety medication, to be successfully adopted, that's going to really reduce the number of animals you can help. So, and if that's your thing, if that's your rescue's sort of mission, then that's fine. But be aware that if that's what you're doing, you're going to be helping many fewer dogs. So, some rescues do specialize in these dogs who need more support. Other rescues just do puppies. They're easy to adopt out, and they can help a whole lot of them at once. And they should have a lot of behavior support, but that's another discussion. But just something to think about. These guys are hard to adopt out, take a lot of resources. And if you've got a lot of resources going into a small number of dogs, usually means that you don't have a lot left over for other animals. Alrighty, so if you have decided that a dog in your care would benefit from a consult with a veterinary behaviorist. This link up here is the directory for the American College of Veterinary Behavior, I think is what that stands for. If you do this search, you can do it geographically. Most people are going to find that there is not a veterinary behaviorist very close to you. If you're looking for somebody and you don't have anyone physically close to you, you can shoot us an email or a PM on Facebook, and we can send you a list of people we know, of veterinary behaviorists we know do remote consulting. And that might be an option for you if you don't have anyone close enough to go drive to. There are also, I would say, a growing number, it seems, of general practice veterinarians who have chosen to specialize in behavior. They are not board certified, they're not veterinary behaviorists, but they have undertaken continuing education in behavior and are going to be more well-versed in the medications that are used in behavior cases. And you can always consult your vet. Whatever vet is helping your rescue works with your rescue. That's a great place to start. The vet, in theory, has examined the dog in question, at least knows kind of right now where their health is at, and can be a good starting point for the discussion about behavior medications. All right, so as I mentioned, there are only 3 days left in June, which is the Foster a Pet month. So if you have been waiting to use the rescue discount, that's this thing at the bottom, Rescue 20, do that soon. That can be used on any of our online classes, membership, or initial consults. If you have a case where you're going to need some significant one-on-one support, this blue link here is a link to our page about private training, which we offer remotely all over the country. And then if you're looking for more free stuff, we've got our blog and our YouTube channel. All right, any questions about what we talked about today? And a huge thank you to Dr. Bain at UC Davis for taking time to just sit down with me and chat about medication use in rescue and shelters. It's a tough topic. And there are lots of dogs out there in foster homes who could really benefit from medications, but there are lots of things to consider if you're going to go that route. All right, everybody. If there aren't any questions, I'll sign off. Have a lovely week. We'll be off. Next Monday is 4th of July here in the US. So we'll be off next Monday, but we'll be back after that with our July topics. All right, everyone, have a great week.